You had your log
I
line
had
for
my log line for the album, but I've forgotten it. But basically, it's the whole album is kind of that tension between like restlessness and resignation. There's that I think is very kind of common when you leave your 20s behind you and
Yeah.
you've got these responsibilities, and it's how do you walk that line between having those sort of restless desires and fantasies, but also having that kind of resignation that no, actually your life is in one place.
Yeah.
A long introduction.
No, it was not an introduction. It was an answer to a question. And I'm still stuck on the phrase aspirationally deadbeat, just so you know. Maybe subconsciously
I need
that's
to phone it in more, Sophie. That's like that's a humble brag and a half, isn't it? I just wish I could be a worse parent. I just can't help it.
it's great. Small town romance, aspirationally deadbeat. There's your log line. But the last track is Ordinary Life, and I think that whole idea of this song cycle, it because Flora
Yes.
used to sing that track as well. It does, if you put the album on loop,
Yeah.
it does all feel like it's the same story, because that's about someone saying she has an ordinary life, except that really in the detail of it, we know that it's not ordinary, and at the same time, it's like everyone's ordinary, but everyone's extraordinary. So somebody's baby, somebody's child, somebody's mother, somebody's wife, defining oneself in relation to others, but also that idea that in that there's this richness of human connection, and it on the surface it's an ordinary life. Yeah, but it's not. So were those songs ever seen by you two as companion pieces?
No.
It all made sense. I think going back to the original question about like how intentional this being more of a song cycle or a sequence that was thematically kind of consistent or a kind of progression. When we just went to sequence the record, that's when we kind of realized. Before that, we were just like, oh, look, whatever songs we've got that we think are kind of cutting, like are making the cut, are sounding good when we've recorded them, because a couple went by the wayside, and then when we sequenced them, it just made all this sense. That was a great moment.
I was pretty sure
the start and the end were very clear.
Yeah, I was pretty sure I wanted Ordinary Life to close the album, because I just think that it's got a kind of pathos to it, and a reflection that we do all. The other kind of aspect to that song, I mean, you've touched on a lot of what it's about, but it's also like we do all strive to be extraordinary in some degree, or maybe some of us have entertained ideas of their own, brilliance more than others. But the reality is, if you do have an ordinary life, if you do have an ordinary life that is rich in relationships, and you have a roof over your head, and you've like that in this kind of day and age, like that is actually quite extraordinary. Like you are so lucky to have an ordinary life, and we spend so long sort of striving for something that is extraordinary, when I think really if we can learn to appreciate the ordinary, we're much happier.
Well, and also that idea that it's not enough. Well, the perception is it's not enough to be extraordinary. You know what I mean? To have those, so all those human connections that you mentioned in that song, they're so important. That's humanity. That's
Exactly.
Community. That's life. But this idea, and I guess in the culture we live in, that you have to be doing things, like you must achieve.
I know.
Not enough to just be something.
Yeah, and that song was written very much in the immediate aftermath of having our first child, and having that kind of realization of, the kind of the reality of your life slapped up against you a little bit. And there's a few songs like that on the album, and I do feel like I want to say that it's quite a time and a place. It's quite a time and a place song, and I don't really feel that way anymore. But yeah, definitely in that immediate kind of aftermath of having our first child and being like, oh wow, like this isn't kind of what I necessarily was expecting, maybe, or I don't know, maybe this is a bigger life shift than I was anticipating. But then actually having a bit of perspective on that and going, no, your life is rich and beautiful and wonderful in its ordinariness.